They say the biggest deal ever made. We're doing things that have never been done in this country before, and our country's becoming very rich again.
Trump just blindsided America's auto industry. Again, this time to dodge a massive economic retaliation Japan had quietly prepared. There was no urgent crisis, no immediate threat, but Trump suddenly decided to flex, threatening Japan with a harsh 25% auto tariff, convinced they'd cave. Instead, he triggered a chain reaction that nearly brought the US economy to its knees. And it all started with picking a fight against one of America's most powerful allies and biggest creditors. Japan didn't panic. They planned. Behind closed doors, Tokyo waited. Their prime minister stayed silent through a tense election season. But after his party lost, the gloves came off. It was payback time, and Japan was ready to hit the US where it hurts. Billions in lost exports, over 840,000 American jobs at risk, and more than $1 trillion in US Treasury bonds hanging in the balance. Trump blinked. In a rushed effort to stop Japan from pulling the trigger, he handed them exactly what they wanted: a softer deal. Tariffs were cut to just 15%, sparing Japan, while leaving American workers exposed.
So I think US automakers are looking at this deal with Japan, and they're like, wait a second, are they getting off better than we are here? They're worried that they will be subject to a higher tariff rate.
In Detroit, the betrayal is personal. Ford, GM, and Stellantis, the big three, are furious. Union leaders are calling it a disaster. Japan walks away with better access, stronger protections, and rising stock prices, while US automakers face higher tariffs just to move their own cars across North America. In this video, I'll break down the real details behind this deal and why it could mark the beginning of the end for American automakers. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss critical breakdowns like this. Let's dive in. Let me explain the dangerous mistake Trump made when he threatened Japan with a 25% tariff on all cars they export to the United States. This wasn't a smart or calculated move. It was reckless. Japan isn't a country the US can easily push around. It has a strong economy and invests heavily in America. But Trump ignored all that and picked a fight that never needed to happen. Japanese companies provide thousands of good-paying jobs in the US. These are people working for Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and others. These companies operate large factories in states like Texas, Ohio, and Kentucky. They pump billions into local economies and fund schools, roads, and hospitals through tax revenue. Without them, many towns would struggle to survive. But Trump didn't think about any of that. He wanted to act tough and force Japan into a new deal. He assumed they'd cave. He was wrong. Japan was furious. And in Japanese culture, respect and honor carry enormous weight. Trump's threats were seen as deeply disrespectful. The timing made it worse. Japan had just held national elections. The ruling party lost its majority in parliament, and many voters were angry about how their leaders were being treated by the US. They blamed Trump's aggressive trade tactics. The prime minister, humiliated and under pressure, met privately with his top advisors. He made it clear: Japan was ready to hit back. "Nothing is off the table," he said. And they weren't bluffing. Japan considered dumping over $1 trillion in US Treasury bonds. As the largest foreign holder of American debt, that kind of move could have caused interest rates to spike, the bond market to crash, and triggered a financial crisis. The damage would have been massive. But that wasn't their only card. Japan also floated the idea of pulling Toyota, Honda, and Nissan out of the US. That would be devastating. Nearly 1 million jobs gone, billions in lost taxes, export routes crippled, entire supply chains shattered. The US auto industry would be thrown into chaos. That's when Trump realized he had gone too far. The White House scrambled to contain the fallout. In the end, he backed down, agreeing to a 15% tariff instead of the 25% he threatened. It was framed as a new trade deal, but in reality, it was a retreat. Japan had taken control. Now the media is praising the deal, calling it good for business. They say both sides win, but that's not what really happened. The US didn't negotiate from strength. It surrendered to avoid disaster. And while Japanese car makers walked away with lower tariffs, market stability, and rising stock prices, American automakers got nothing. No tariff relief, no new protections, just empty promises. Trump didn't protect American jobs. He put them at risk. He didn't win a better deal. He created a crisis, then scrambled to cover it up. Now Detroit is furious, Japan is celebrating, and the US looks weaker than ever. The backlash came fast. Ford, GM, and Stellantis, through the American Automotive Policy Council, condemned the Japan deal as a bad deal, and they had reason to. While Japan now enjoys a reduced 15% tariff on vehicles and auto parts, American automakers are still hit with a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, where much of their production happens. For decades, US car manufacturers have struggled to compete with Japanese brands abroad. Now, even on home turf, the playing field is tilted against them, and this time, the damage may be irreversible. Just look at the numbers. In 2023, Toyota sold more cars in the US than any American brand. They didn't just beat Ford, GM, and Stellantis in sales, they dominated in reliability, fuel efficiency, and long-term trust. Toyota and Honda now lead in nearly every category: sedans, hybrids, SUVs, and even pickups. Their vehicles last longer, cost less to maintain, and retain more value. That's what matters to buyers, here and worldwide. Meanwhile, US automakers are in serious trouble. Ford has seen profits fall for 2 straight years, with EV projects draining capital and legacy divisions barely hanging on. GM is laying off workers, cutting costs, and postponing EV rollouts. Stellantis, the parent of Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep, is quietly pulling out of global markets. These aren't growth stories, they're retreats. Some American brands are barely surviving. Chrysler, once a giant, now sells just a single minivan in the US, and may not be around much longer. Buick relies almost entirely on Chinese sales. Lincoln, Ford's luxury brand, has lost ground to Lexus and Acura and is a shadow of what it once was. Now picture these struggling companies facing a sudden 25% spike in parts costs. Most still rely heavily on imported transmissions, electronics, batteries, and sensors. That kind of price shock hits fast. Meanwhile, Japanese automakers, many already manufacturing inside the US, avoid those extra costs. Their supply chains are stronger, their production more efficient, and now they've secured more favorable trade terms. And this isn't just about balance sheets. If even one major American automaker fails, tens of thousands of jobs vanish overnight. These companies support a web of factories, suppliers, dealerships, and service centers nationwide. Entire towns in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana depend on them. If Chrysler or Buick disappears, they take entire communities with them. Globally, the outlook is even worse. In Africa, Asia, South America, and increasingly in Europe, buyers prefer Japanese cars. They're seen as reliable, affordable, fuel-efficient, and easy to maintain. American cars? Often viewed as bulky, expensive, and out of touch. Now with tariffs pushing prices even higher, expanding into these markets will be nearly impossible. So here's the question. If American automakers can't compete at home and can't grow abroad, what's left? This isn't just about cars. This is about one of the last great symbols of American industry, slowly collapsing under political pressure. Was this ever about protection, or was it just a political stunt gone wrong? Union leaders are now adding their voices to the growing backlash. Tony Toddy, president of United Auto Workers Local 14 in Ohio, didn't hold back. Japan doesn't buy American cars, so what's the point? His message was clear. Unless the US negotiates better terms, the deal is a giveaway.
We actually need a strong trade deal because these tariffs could go away overnight. We need to replace it with a deal, but it needs to be better than the Japanese deal.
And the numbers back him up. In 2024, Japan imported just 16,000 American-made vehicles. Meanwhile, the US brought in over $40 billion worth of Japanese cars and auto parts. This agreement does nothing to correct that massive imbalance. Toddy also warned that this deal sets a dangerous precedent. It weakens the US position in upcoming talks with Canada, Mexico, and more urgently, China. If 15% becomes the new baseline, America risks losing its last remaining leverage. And with China gearing up to flood global markets with ultra-cheap electric vehicles, many fear the Japan deal will serve as a model for future capitulations. How can the US hope to compete if it keeps giving away its strongest negotiating chips? Let's look at the hard costs. General Motors reported that tariffs cost them $1.1 billion just last quarter. By year's end, they expect losses to reach $5 billion, not from poor sales, but from trade policy chaos and cross-border inefficiencies. That's capital no longer going toward new factories, innovation, or jobs. And it's not just GM. Across the industry, automakers are bleeding cash. Uneven tariffs, rising material costs, and policy volatility are crushing margins. Trump insists these tariffs protect American jobs. But the data tells another story. Domestic companies are absorbing the costs, while foreign competitors walk away with the advantages. So who ends up footing the bill? Not Japan, not the White House, it's American consumers. As automakers face rising costs, they're left with two options: absorb the losses or raise prices. And with car prices already near record highs, the market can't handle much more. Any further inflation could crush demand and trigger a wave of layoffs. But that's only part of the problem. The unpredictability of Trump's trade moves has made long-term business planning nearly impossible. Investments are slowing. Innovation is stalling. Factories are holding off on hiring, not because demand is weak, but because policy is unstable. And now there's something bigger looming. The China deal is next. Industry insiders are panicking, because if the Japan agreement sets the precedent, China could walk away with even more. China's auto market is massive. Its manufacturing is state-subsidized, and its EV sector is poised to flood the world with ultra-cheap exports. Union leaders are sounding the alarm. If Trump offers China the same soft tariffs in exchange for vague investment pledges, it could wipe out America's EV ambitions before they even take off. China doesn't play fair, and now, thanks to Trump's misstep with Japan, they've seen exactly how to win. Trump keeps pointing to $550 billion in promised Japanese investment as a win. But let's pause. Much of that figure includes pre-existing long-term plans. It's not all new. Most of it comes from private companies, not the Japanese government. And there are no guarantees these jobs will be unionized, high-paying, or even permanent. The danger is real. If this path continues, the US auto industry could face a collapse it may not recover from. And this time, the blame won't fall on global competition or market trends. It will rest squarely on Washington and on political theater taken too far. If you want to keep getting sharp breakdowns like this, make sure you're subscribed to the channel.